I now recognize the ranking member for any statement he would like to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, it's an honor to be here and at our first hearing of our subcommittee in this Congress. It's my first hearing as a ranking member. I look forward to what I hope will be a very productive 2 years, because I believe the issues before this subcommittee are some of the most important issues that our nation faces today. Namely, what will our future energy supply mix be? Where will it come from? And how will we balance the competing demands placed on our public lands? You know, we're faced with the pressing questions of how to manage and mitigate the impacts of the tremendous growth in oil and gas development over the past decade. Finally, we're all going to be dealing with the effects of a changing planet also, and we're going to need to responsibly look at the contributions of fossil fuel as we oversee that we oversee in this committee. These are all very big questions, and I think we're going to get a good start in the next 2 years with a very active schedule over the next 2 weeks by hearing from each of the agencies that are under our jurisdiction about their budget priorities. Today we have 3 agencies that until 5 years ago used to be part of the same entity, the Minerals Management Service, and I think it's instructive to have them here at the same time to remind us exactly why that agency was broken up. You know, we should not forget the lessons of the Deepwater Horizon tragedy that cost 11 workers their lives and resulted in the largest environmental disaster in American history. I believe the most important lesson is not about the blowout preventers or casing failures or safety culture, although these are certainly all very important. I think the most important lesson is about overconfidence, complacency, and hubris. Few people remember this, but in August of 2009, an oil platform off the coast of Australia suffered a massive blowout that discharged oil into the ocean for 74 days. In November of 2009, shortly after that blowout was capped, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee held a hearing on offshore drilling. And in that hearing, we were told that the rig used in Australia, quotes, wouldn't even be allowed in this country because it doesn't stand up to our strict environmental rules. We were reassured by industry that drilling technology and U.S. regulations had reached the point that a similar incident was virtually impossible in this country. A BP executive pointed out that, quote, releases from oil and gas operations are rare, and the application of technology has enabled a dramatic reduction of releases from our industry over the past 30 years. Almost 5 months to the day later, the Deepwater Horizon exploded. And all of our modern technology and all of our strict regulations and all of our assurances that we had been given by the industry that it could respond immediately to such an event were proven wrong. The well flowed into the Gulf for 87 days, 2 weeks longer than the well in Australia. I bring this up to remind us of an undeniable fact that we cannot avoid, that sometimes technologies will fail, sometimes people will make mistakes, and sometimes our regulations will come up short. We should keep that in mind when we're thinking about drilling in the Arctic or off the eastern seaboard. It may seem safe, but it only takes one slip for these coasts to suffer the same fate as the Gulf in 2010 or Southern California in 1969 after the Santa Barbara oil spill. In those areas where offshore drilling is currently occurring, we need to do everything we can do to make sure that it's done as safely as humanly possible. Certainly improvements have been made in the past 5 years, thanks in large part to the hard work of the dedicated employees at the agencies that are represented here today. But they need Congress's help. First, we must ensure that they get the funding they need to do their jobs, and we need to update our outdated laws to reflect the lessons learned from the Deepwater Horizon. After the Santa Barbara spill, we passed the National Environment Policy Act, and after the Exxon Valdez, we passed the Oil Pollution Act. But since Deepwater Horizon spill, we have passed absolutely nothing to improve the safety of operations on the Outer Continental Shelf. I hope we can work together on this subcommittee to change that, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to the witness's testimony.
Okay, thank you, Director. I now recognize Ranking Member Lowenthal for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd just like to kind of take before I ask questions, a little bit of a kind of different take on some of the things that have already been raised. And maybe the Chair pointed out that in questioning before Secretary Jewell that she could not guarantee that the Atlantic lease sale would be in the finalized 5-year proposal. I would like to point something out, elaborate on that a little bit, and that really what she presented was a draft proposal which was issued by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and I again say a draft under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act and also the Administrative Procedures Act. A draft is a draft. That's exactly it. And under those laws, you cannot guarantee anything in a draft until you've received comments from the state, from local governments, and from the public. And so you're correct. She refused to guarantee, but that was her responsibility to refuse to guarantee. Because if she had, she would have been circumventing the law that requires her to consider public input before guaranteeing anything. So it's been proposed, but she certainly could not guarantee anything. I also wanted to point out, when you talked about leased offshore acres, that we have approximately now a little bit under 94 million available acres for leasing that are already out there. Of those, only 28.6 million are actually leased. What that means is that almost over 80%, which could be leased, are just not producing. And there's a very, very small percentage. And so it's really the marketplace that's driving these decisions, not the role of the administration. How many are producing when they're actually available to be is really due to the fact that the market is now saying, everybody take a deep breath and slow down at this moment. So I'd like to point that out also. Director Hopper, what I'd like to know is, following up on that, in the proposed 2017 to 22 5-year program, how many acres are actually going to be available for leasing?
Congressman, under the draft proposed program, there are 317 million acres currently being considered for.
Okay, so under the draft, which again can't be guaranteed until we get all this public input, but there is proposed 317 million.
Correct.
And now under the current plan, how many are available?
There are approximately 219 million acres currently available under the current plan.
So what you're saying is the administration is proposing a little bit less than 100 million additional acres. Next question is, how many acres has the President protected with the Bristol Bay and the Arctic withdrawals?
Sure. When you combine the Bristol Bay and the Arctic withdrawals, the President protected 42 million acres.
So he's opening up 98 million new acres, protecting less than half of those numbers for protection. I'll let those numbers speak for themselves in terms of what. Let's get back to how this administration compares to the previous administration. How many acres were available in the last 5-year program, the 2007 to 2012, that was approved during the Bush administration?
The acreage that was available that was approved during the Bush administration was 181 million acres.
So I know my colleagues are going to point out that there was a moratorium in place on a large part of the Outer Continental Shelf when President Bush offered the 5-year plan. But from the data that we have from the Bush administration, we have calculated that they offered approximately of the available data, of the available acreage, they offered approximately 15% of the available acreage in that plan. Does that sound right to you?
That sounds approximately right.
And so in your proposal, you're making over 18% of the Outer Continental Shelf acreage available for leasing. Is that true?
That's correct.
So let's recap. You're offering 134 million more acres for oil and gas development than President Bush did. You're also offering up a larger percentage of the OCS for leasing. You're opening up more than twice as many new acres as you're trying to protect. Now, personally, I think that's kind of moving in the wrong direction, as Congressman Cartwright has pointed out, that we could be doing a lot more. But I think it also puts to rest some of the claims that you're not providing enough access for oil and gas development. And thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you.